Greetings. Let's learn how to write a case study. What is there in the heart of it? But before that, here comes a caution that it must not be using generative AI in any form, even for correcting the grammars. The case must be fictitious so that no objection certificate is not required. It must be between 600 to 750 words in total. Now, the great question is what all a case should have. A comprehensive checklist for the cases that it should have a case title, the scenario, background, the dilemma, the question, which is the ask, and the application of theory to the practice. Now, starting with case title, it should be concise yet informative. For example, a good case title could be The Consumer Engagement Roadblock Level Up. Now, this particular title tells you a little about that it is the case is, of course, about consumer engagement and there is some roadblock. It also tells you that somebody is looking to level the game up. Okay, so this is quite a concise title yet informative one. Coming to the next one. So here is a scenario. A scenario is an introduction to the problematic situation. A scenario example could be that it starts with date, introducing the protagonist, designation, and the company. It then tells you what exactly is the problem. For example, in January 2024, Anand, the chief executive officer and founder of Gamify Love, got feedback from his corporate clients that their employees are increasingly asking, learning is fine, but at the end of the day, is there any material benefit if they complete a gamified learning solution provided by Gamify Love? It came as a surprise to and concern for the CEO. Anand has to act on his feedback and act swiftly, right? So this is a problem statement that we have here introduced in the scenario itself. So it sets the plot. Then comes the background of the company. You remember it is the background of the company. So it has to be fictitious, yet the details should look realistic. So if you're providing any numbers, they should look realistic. Then comes protagonist and designation in that, other characters and designations, operations of the company, and the size of the company in terms of financials or in terms of strength. When we talk about the strength, employee strength. So, protagonist is the hero. There could also be an antagonist who is a villain around whom the entire case revolves. Other characters and designations which are only relevant, only those have to be provided. Then comes the next heading, which is dilemma. So, a dilemma is a situation that requires a decision maker to decide one from either action one or two. There could be multiple actions possible, but let's not go into several actions. Let's restrict ourselves to the best one or two, or maybe at the max three actions. Now, here, important point is that inaction or maintaining the status quo is not a possibility for the protagonist. So you cannot say the protagonist will wait. That's just not possible. The pros and cons of each action must be elaborated in the dilemma. An example of dilemma could be this. Now here you see in the first paragraph, all the details, the inputs have been provided. Here you cannot be judgmental to say it was best, it was verse or things like that. Here you have to only provide certain facts or maybe figures. Okay, so you may say that there were two kinds of sides. Okay, and one side was saying and advocating action 1, whereas another side was advocating action 2. So when they advocate, they tell in detail what are the possible pros of taking that action, whereas the other side is telling the cons of the other side's actions. What is ask? Ask is the question that you ask to the readers. What should Anand do? This is a very simple question. Ask should be restricted to at the max two questions. But this is a common question. What should the protagonist do? Now, this is the most important area wherein you have to link theory with the case. So you have to apply theory to the case dilemma in order to resolve managerial dilemma. Now, it has to be maximum 200 words. An example of this is the case can be discussed in 30 minutes, in that the class may be asked to choose sides. So, which particular action should be taken? How many of the people advocate action 1 versus action 2? So, when asked in the class the question, what should Anand do? The class will most likely say one portion of the class advocating the Anand should change the fundamentals of the game and its clients' requirements and will help users get additional motivation and things like that. On the other hand, the other side will say Anand should stick to his current product and do modifications pre and post playing of serious games such as elevation of role to mentor, coach, advisor, etc. of the player. Some of them could relate it with the self determination, which is the end goal. Ultimately, you want the readers to understand self determination theory, because of which the case was administered. So they might say that it analyzes how different elements of the game may fulfill three basic psychological needs, including autonomy, competence, and relatedness of the users. However, in this case, you have picked a very, very important aspect of self determination theory, which is it's important to find a balance between over reliance on extrinsic rewards, whereas too much of intrinsic rewards. So, intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation has to have a balance. For example, instead of using material rewards for every achievement, companies could shift to offering meaningful rewards that acknowledge progress, which satisfy both the need for competence and relatedness. This is it. Thank you.